time world premiere here at Amami. Some of you having had some run at the film festivals and then showing in India for the first time or South Asia in the first time. So why don't I start with Sumant and then we can actually. So Sumant, Fazil, Diva, and then Nina and Anais. Then I'll come to Kanu and Sophie after that.
Yeah. So if you could just repeat the question, you
So I'm
want to know the.
asking how your journey into the filmmaking thing, and mainly in terms of actually the practical issues that you dealt with
Okay.
while making your debut film, the kind of problems that you had to face,
Okay.
how you went about doing it, and how did it actually become a film,
Okay.
right?
Okay. So how did I end up being a filmmaker? I think that goes way back into early 2000s when I started making short films. Okay, with the idea of being a filmmaker, and I think yeah, we started. I was in a full-time IT job. I was a software engineer, so I used to make short films over weekends. And then the bug bit me, and I kind of started pursuing it a little more seriously. And that is when I realized that it's an extremely expensive art form. Okay, and like a painter can just paint on his own, a musician can do his own stuff, but so that kind of uh, made me take a back step. I did not plunge into filmmaking full time, but yeah, I took a long break from filmmaking, and I was fortunate to find a producer who was a friend of mine, who's a big actor and also is supporting a lot of newer, fresher voices. So kind of he reached out to me saying he remembered me from my short film days. So 15 years later, or it's 18 years later, that I'm finally having my debut film here. So it's been a long journey. It's a dream I've lived for over close to 2 decades now. So yeah, I mean that's where I started.
And I think this is one of the routes that actually we actually see a lot, that people who take up short film making. I mean, and again, another grouping that we have here is of trained, like academically trained or institutionally trained filmmakers and people who have self-taught. So that is another grouping that we have here. So many of the people who have not been to institutions of filmmaking often start off like this. And I think Fasil also has a similar story. Fasil might speak in Malayalam and I'll translate for him, and for Anais and Sophie, if we need translation, there's Pratik who will translate. Yeah.
താങ്ക് യു രതീഷ്. ആക്ച്വലി ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ ഡിഗ്രി പഠന സമയത്ത് ഒരുപാട് ഫെസ്റ്റിവൽസും അതുപോലെ ഒരുപാട് സിനിമകളും കണ്ടിട്ടാണ് സിനിമ ചെയ്യാൻ തന്നെ പഠിച്ചത്. അതിൽ പ്രധാനമായിട്ടും ഞാൻ കോളേജുകൾ നടത്തുന്ന സ്പോർട്ട് കോമ്പറ്റീഷനിലെല്ലാം അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്യും. ഒരു ദിവസം കൊണ്ട് സിനിമ ഉണ്ടാക്കുക, 3 ദിവസം കൊണ്ട് സിനിമ ഉണ്ടാക്കുക. അപ്പോൾ വളരെ ചെറിയ സമയം കൊണ്ട് നമുക്ക് സിനിമ ചെയ്യാനുള്ള നമ്മുടെ ആവശ്യമായി മാറും അത്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ അങ്ങനെ പഠിച്ചെടുക്കും. അങ്ങനെ ഒരു 3 വർഷത്തെ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസിന് ശേഷമാണ് ഞാൻ ആദ്യമായിട്ട് എൻ്റെ ഷോർട്ട് ഫിലിം ചെയ്യുന്നത്. പിന്നീട് ആണ് സിനിമ ചെയ്യാൻ ഒരു 5 വർഷം എടുത്തു ആദ്യ സിനിമ ചെയ്യാൻ.
I'll translate this and let him continue. What you're saying is that while he's studying, he's trying to actually get into filmmaking and so on, studying college. And one of the things that he would do is to participate in these competitions that various colleges would make, what he calls spot filmmaking, like make a quick film and kind of do it. So which also he thinks gave him kind of a training in actually organizing his work and so on and so forth in a quick kind of fashion. Fazil, also about how did you find the producer? How did you? I mean, Fazil has made a short film before, 2 short films before, one of which I've seen. How did you get to the feature film stage?
എൻ്റെ ആദ്യ സിനിമ ആദ്യ ഷോർട്ട് ഫിലിം അതിര് വഴിയാണ് എനിക്ക് പ്രൊഡ്യൂസർ കിട്ടിയത്, പ്രമോദ് ഈസിയർ. പുള്ളി IDSFKയിൽ നമ്മുടെ ഷോർട്ട് ഫിലിം കണ്ട് അങ്ങനെ നമ്മൾ അപ്രോച്ച് ചെയ്തതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ പാരലായിട്ട് ഞാൻ പല ആളുകളായിട്ട് ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്തു. പക്ഷേ ഒരു സ്റ്റാർ ഇല്ലാത്തതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ നമുക്ക് പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ കിട്ടാൻ വളരെ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടായിരുന്നു. അങ്ങനെ പുള്ളി ഞാനും കൂടി ചേർത്തിട്ടാണ് ഇത് ചെയ്തത്.
So again, another aspect that Faz is touching upon is the significance of film festivals. If we first talked about the significance of these sport competitions, because his short film was shown in IDSFK, which is a major short film and documentary film festival in India, and the producer saw the film and approached him. So it's a happy chance. I mean, not many filmmakers do get such kind of happy kind of connections, but that's where Fasil actually comes from in filmmaking. Yeah, and we can go back, we can come back to some of these things as we go along. Diva, why don't you?
So I think the main challenge is to find funding and producers. And when you set out to make a film in India with no stars, with no known actor, and with no music, people don't understand it. People don't know how like their money is going to be recovered. So I think that's what the main challenge is. As I was talking to Anis about it, like how the lack of infrastructure or lack of public funding. So where do you go? So you need independent producers, maybe who've done a work like this before. And that's how I approached it, was actually Instagram, because I hounded this person who had put up a post looking for content, and he was working at a company at the time, and then he backed off. And I was like, you have to listen to my script. Listen, please come once and listen to my script. And I literally had to beg him and plead him, and that's how all of it started. Yeah.
Again, I mean, we can actually see different kinds of ways in which people navigating this problem. And one thing that's come up in earlier panels and discussions are also, especially talking about India, the kind of difficulty in finding kind of an organized production sector for independent cinema. I mean, you actually have to find random individuals who are interested in something that you're doing, pursue them one way or the other, and so on. This, I would think, is slightly different in Europe, I would imagine. I mean, who knows? I don't know. But as for imagination coming from a place like this. But Nina, if you could talk about, I know that your film was also a graduation project in your film school. So it'll be interesting to talk about a different kind of trajectory that you've had and finding the producer and stuff.
Yeah, so I don't know for the rest of Europe, but in Serbia too, it's very hard to find someone, especially when you're just up and coming. When it's your first feature, it's nearly impossible. So the way we did it, because I kind of knew that, and in the back of my head, I didn't want to not make my film, and so we decided to make it straight out of school. It was basically a school project. We found funding on the side because it was still a bigger project than we would normally do in school. But we did it very in humble conditions and with people that I knew and that I went to school with. And then the actors came a little bit later, and we had some really, I would say, known actors that accepted to work in those conditions because they liked the story and because they were passionate about it, but at the same time they could afford it because they still worked on bigger projects.
So again, a different route again. Anais, what is your kind of trajectory to making your debut film?
So I began as an actress, but I didn't like this job because I was depending on other desire, not my own desire. So, but I didn't have any money to write and to make my own film. So I have to continue to work as an actress. But finally, I have a huge accident on the road during a shooting. A motorcycle hurt me really badly. And then I go to the hospital and I have indemnity. And so I was thinking to myself, if I have indemnity, I can write my own film. And it was my first short film, and then find a producer. And then in Europe, especially in France, we have the CNC. It's a public funding. And so I was thinking at the hospital when I was writing that I will be find the producer and then go to CNC, and everything happened as I planned it. So it was really great. And after I did 3 short movies, and then I was looking for a new producer for my feature film because I want a new producer. But there were coronavirus. So I have to wait 1 year because nobody wants to read my script because we were thinking it was the end of the world. So I have to wait. But after 1 year, a producer read my script and it was okay. And we go to the CNC and other stuff like that.
It's interesting when we start this conversation, especially about filmmaking and how everybody made the film. We are talking to a set of people who've made the film, right? So there is a happy story there. That part of the story is not such a sad story, right? The difficulties start later. We'll come to that in a minute. But before that, I want to actually ask Kanu and then Sophie about their own trajectory. This is the second film that we are showing here, Agra. Both have gone to big festivals, both were at Cannes, if I'm right. Yeah.
Yes.
So Kanu, I mean, for you, you are again a trained filmmaker like Nina. You were studying SRFTI in Calcutta. So what was your trajectory to making the first film? And again, was the second film easy, difficult?
So the first film was back in 2014.
2014. So That is the
So
answer.
it was very easy to do the second one. It was really, really easy. Trajectory into making the first film, meaning you're saying how did I eventually end up
End up making
getting it
films.
produced?
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly.
yeah, um, so I went to film school and I graduated in 2007, and around the time I was in my final year, there was a very strong doc movement that was happening out of Calcutta, documentary movement, and I so I was very fiction oriented when I went to film school, but I discovered documentary at film school, and I was completely taken aback. Uh, by a completely different form of filmmaking. I was like, wow, we can do this also. So I had started making my own docs by then. I was doing a doc for NHK, for ZDF Arte. I did a short. So I was sort of in the process of making stuff, and so I by the time I was graduating, I was already finishing one of my docs. And sorry, I'm doing a long. I'll try to cut it as short as possible. But one of my professors at film school was meeting a famous Indian filmmaker called Dibakar Banerjee, because he wanted to show his editing work. So I thought, fellow filmmaker, I'm editing, need feedback. So I slipped in one of my own doc discs, and that doc was being shot in Delhi, and Dibakar's next film was being shot in Delhi. So I just wanted to show him some of my work and get feedback, but he saw, and I shot it myself. So he saw and he said, you have a really good grip of the city, and I had grown up in Delhi. So he said, okay, I'm making a film. Why don't you come? So that became, even while I was finishing my doc, it was an accident. I ended up working with him on Oy Lucky Lucky Oy, and our relationship just grew really quickly from there. And I ended up writing his next